It's preparing the live stream right now. Okay, it's actually got it. And we are live. Okay, that was like immediate. Okay.
Cool.
All right, so I'm gonna copy that while I'm getting this shared here.
Live on YouTube. I got her.
Oh, you already found it?
Yeah, it's up on my screen.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna go regular Facebook. And if you can copy that link and paste it in and go to your Facebook page.
Right.
Oh God.
Did you get it?
Yeah, it's just my all of a sudden decided to install drivers really quick.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just my
Well, you're up. I'm looking at you on Facebook now.
Great.
One watching.
Decided to install drivers really quick. That'd be you.
Yeah, it's just my well, you're up. I'm looking at you on Facebook now.
Yeah, you're gonna have to close out of that.
Yeah, no, I knew that. I'd get the feedback. I just want to let you know.
Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, we're closing that OBS. Close that. Golly, sorry about this, man.
Oh, we're good.
So in my efforts to get this fixed, I reinstalled my graphics drivers for my video card. And so now my second monitor is not working. It's perfect. It's great. It won't detect it either. This is so cool. Oh boy. Okay. I got the lock, right? Okay. Oh. I think we're still going, right? Video card. Okay. Okay, we got 8 people watching. I'm really sorry, guys, that this took as long as it did. Can you guys comment either on the Facebook page, Ogden's Facebook page, or my Facebook page, or on YouTube, and let us know if you're on here. There's a live chat option on YouTube where you can comment. I'm going to say something right now. Oh, yeah, Linda Crawford's on here. Great, perfect. Okay, so I think we're working all right. Ogden, you still hear me all right, man?
Yeah, we're great.
Awesome, awesome. So really appreciate everybody jumping on. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We actually jumped on this like 15 minutes early in hopes of making sure there were no kinks. And as soon as I was in Zoom and I went to stream directly to Facebook, it gave me like this swirly working wheel of death. We sat there for like 10 minutes looking like idiots at it. I tried everything. I managed to crash my video card somehow where only one of my monitors is working now. So that's just super fun. Not the normal route we definitely wanted to go, but just the same, here we are. So really appreciate everybody's patience.
Yes, thank you all very much.
So Ogden, we just finished out the 2020 legislative session, and the reason why I made this like custom graphic showing Ogden versus Tyler is we had like this crazy thing happen during this legislative session where we just kept getting put up against each other as like chairman of joint conferences, opposition on bills between House and Senate. And so it was a little bit more of a fight club this go around than it's ever been in the 6 years I've been in the legislature. Now, granted, we're still arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder on 99% of the bills. But anyways, I thought it was interesting. What are your thoughts on that, man?
Still worked exactly the same. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Outside of the budget itself, Tyler and I were on every major bill that came across on the committees that negotiated the settlements, which we got by great on everyone except for Capcom. And we've got a good story to tell on Capcom, and it was pretty interesting in the end, and we both failed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it's kind of a wild horse wreck of a deal. And so what we've got here, guys, is I've got a PowerPoint, and PowerPoints ain't great. I know that. Is your phone ringing, Og?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I can't shut my house phone off, so I got a problem. I'll have to do something different.
So, anyways, I got a PowerPoint, and PowerPoints are horrible. I know that, and so I'm going to apologize, but we'll make it fun because we'll try to make fun of Ogden most of the time, and that always makes things a little bit more fun. I think, anyways. Ogden, you all right with me making fun of you a little bit?
Let's go for it. It's careful what comes back at you.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, so can you see that, Ogden?
Yeah, no, it's good.
Great. And of course, I'm at the very end of it instead of the beginning. Boom, now we're supposed to be. So like we were saying, me and Ogden experienced a little opposition towards each other this go around, but just the same, I guarantee we can go down through most of these bills and you'll find we're kind of in the same spot. And we will be talking a little bit about coronavirus response, the CARES Act, those types of things, but we never really got the opportunity to talk about what we did during legislative session. So I wanted to talk to you guys and give you guys the opportunity to know what we were up to. And hopefully you guys can ask questions through YouTube. That would be really good. That'd be really handy. So kicking the ball off here, legislation by the numbers, 398 total bills were considered this year in the House and Senate, 256 in the House, 142 in the Senate. 167 of those bills became law. So that's, what is that, 400 bills, 167 became law. 42% of legislation this session became law, essentially. Most of those, as you can see below, were actual committee files. So 40 bills out of the House were actually individual sponsored, and 26 out of the Senate were individual sponsored. So the large majority of those were committee bills, and committee bills are worked throughout the interim, and it gives folks an idea of what's going on.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. You've got less than one bill per House person passed and less than one bill per senator passed. Right. So it tells you how tough it is to get a personal bill out in a budget session.
Right. No, it's super tough. Ogden, I think you got 2, isn't that right?
I got 2.
Yeah.
Actually, we got 4, but 2 with my name on them.
I don't know what you're talking about. I got 2 also. It was a decent session. I there was a couple that slipped through the cracks. I ended up amending one bill that died for lack of time being seen, and it was really needed by the county clerks. So I ended up amending that into another bill that had the same title, the same subject matter. So we were able to get that done. So I guess you could count that as 3, but anyways, oops, I'm going too fast. There we go. All right, so going into the coronavirus, guys, as a lot of you folks already know, March 13th, President Trump declared a national emergency in Wyoming. Governor Mark Gordon declared a state emergency in Wyoming, open up funding for state and local governments to address the coronavirus. And we're still very much in that scenario. We would love, both of us, Senator Driscoll and I would both love to be with you guys at your hometown talking about these things and being able to speak to you in person. but it is what it is. It's the times we live in, and we didn't want to leave you guys out and not be able to have
Yeah,
this.
we spent a bunch of time kind of waiting to do some town halls and decided that this was our only way. And we kind of live on our feedback from you folks. So we thought we'd try it this way. If this works, well, you'll probably be seeing a few more of these as we go along. Pretty trying times for Wyoming. This put a test both on the nation and on our state. So we've got budget issues going side by side with COVID concerns. So it really is going to be a trying time. We're in a historic time that nobody's seen anything like this before.
Right, right. No, it's absolutely right. So we're dealing with it as quickly as we can. And we're definitely going to talk more about that as towards the end of this this PowerPoint about some of the conversations that Senator Driscoll and I have had with Governor Gordon and his staff, and opening up our economy again and looking at a plan to get these businesses back going. So I think there's some good news there. All right. So talking about the Wyoming State Capitol, as you guys know, a lot of you know, we just finished up with the renovation on our historic Capitol, and then also on the Hirschler building. And so both of those are fully open now, and the job is complete. It's good to be back in the Capitol. It feels a little bit more like a legislative experience versus a working out of an old Kmart, because that's what we're actually doing, working out of an old Kmart. So this is much nicer, and it's the people's house. We get a lot to be proud of there. The people of Wyoming have a lot to be proud of. A lot of states just went their own way and decided they didn't need a historic capital anymore and just built new. And so in Wyoming, we chose to keep our historic capital around. So I think that's better than having a giant shopping center looking building. I'm pretty proud of the work that went into this. So that was a 15-year plan to get that money saved, and we finally got there, and done deal.
And the truth of it is, it was a pretty reasonable cost. It sounds like a lot of money, but it also included the largest office building in the state for a complete renovation in addition to the Capitol. So it wasn't just a capital expense to do it.
Right. So I actually got and I'll go over this, but I just want to let folks know, if you don't want to comment on YouTube while I'm going through this, Ogden, you're keeping track of those comments on YouTube, right?
I don't know how, but I can figure out, right?
Okay, just mute the YouTube live feed, so that way we're not getting feedback. But there's a little comment section off to the right of the window. Normally I'd be able to if I had both monitors working, but I am getting questions. Richard Johnson did ask, are you supplied data? Yeah, so you're just gonna have to mute that, Og. Normally I'd be able to if I had both monitors working. Just mute the YouTube. You get it? Perfect. Yeah. So the question is, are you supplied data on how much the state has lost in energy revenues? Somewhat, right? We're getting estimations. I mean, we really won't know until about 6 or 7 months from now, to a year from now, as those revenues from this time period start rolling in. But we'll go over that more as we get into the budget. And here we are in the budget. So total general fund appropriations, that's what you'll find most legislators talk about consistently as in regards to the size of our budget, because most legislators, and I think most people, consider the school budgets a separate budget unto itself. But to keep the wheels on the bus as far as general state government goes, that's the general fund appropriations. And so general fund appropriations this year, $2.9 billion. And that's for a 2-year budget, 21 and 22. And that budget is, was that 300 or 400 million less than the last biennium budget? Last one was 3.1 billion.
Yeah, about 300, I think. And that's, the state's been on a trend actually for about the last 8 years. Our budgets have been declining. Almost no one understands that, but we've been on about 8 years of declining budgets, and also doing with less employees, if you don't count education. Now, education has taken up part of the gap on that, but our general fund size, the trend has been downward in spending and downward on employees.
Right. And then you look at federal fund appropriations. So those are the different types of grants and programs that If the state's in compliance with a federal program, then those funds are received. As you can see, that is a monster of 1.7 billion. And I honestly, I think that's a tough number to peg because there's a lot of grants out there that agencies are able to put in for without any legislative approval. And so I think that number could actually be bigger as far as federal fund appropriations. Anyways, you get into school foundation program account. That's what that's our schools, 1.8 billion, and other fund appropriations, $2.2 billion. And so that 2.2, that would be the types of other funds such as your tobacco settlement, your and the list goes on. Lots of coffee cans out there. Can you name some other ones, Og?
I was just reading comments. What did you just bring up? Sorry.
Other fund appropriations, like one of them is a tobacco settlement fund. What's another one? Or two?
Oh, shoot. You know, some of the other funds that would be your part of your school funds or other funds, highway monies.
Okay.
There's actually a lot of our health programs are other funds, federal funds that come in, mental health, substance abuse. Lots of those are federal monies that flow back in on the other funds appropriations.
Okay. And then getting into our large agencies and programs, obviously the Department of Health is a huge animal at $2 billion. A&I, that's our employees' salaries and the state of Wyoming. So that's almost $1 billion by itself. We've got quite a few employees, but that also takes into consideration county health employees, those types of folks. Which is kind of a misnomer, right? We count our state employees, even though they work for a medical district, a hospital district. They're not really state employees, but they're counted as such. Department of Corrections, Judicial Branch, the Wyoming Business Council, those are all large appropriations.
And back to where Representative Lindholm was at on the employees, one of the reasons Wyoming shows high in employees also is we've taken over federal primacy on our ag programs and on our DEQ. So those amount to lots and lots of employees that the feds actually give us the money on, but the state administers the program and allows us to be the one that enforces the rules.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, get into education funding. K through 12 foundation program, that's 1.8 billion for school districts, and then school capital construction account for K through 12 facilities, leases, related projects, it's $87.8 million. That has shrunk considerably over the years, just because we're not building schools like we used to by any stretch of the imagination. Department of Education, $325 million to keep that up and rolling. And then other education would be other education refers to special education and those types of things, right, Og?
Yeah, absolutely. Your State Department of Education, one of the main things they do is administer federal monies that come in. So that's once again another one that a lot of their purpose is to distribute those monies out to the local districts and take care of mandates that come from the federal government with the money. Gotcha.
And I did finally get my the comment section working where I can actually see it too, so I'll help out here. And I did see one of our interns during the legislative session, Tegan Marchant, is watching. So big hello to the Marchant family. Thanks for jumping on, guys. Really appreciate you being here. We're being streamed on the Marchant Family TV. Boom. Legislative session. And the benefit is you can always mute me. When I'm saying something you don't like, you can just mute. And we're going to get into text. We're going to get into more of the revenue decline due to COVID-19 situation, along with the drop in oil prices. We're definitely going to talk about that. So hang tough with us, guys. Really.
Yeah, no doubt. Education this year, back to the budget, I believe about 133 million increase from the year before. We did an ECA and a couple others. We're also, and I think it'll probably come up a little later, this is a recalibration year, so we're looking again at education costs and how they're allocated.
Right. Higher education, community colleges, what those guys look like, the Wyoming Works student grant account. I just gotta say this, how much I despise the Wyoming Works program. I think that is just my opinion on Wyoming Works is just so far I'm really hoping next year I'm going to be proven wrong on this, but so far it's just been a feed bucket for administration. And so I'm hoping next year I'm proven wrong. And there's all of these grants that have gone out to kids to go to trade schools. That was the intent of the bill. And listen, I'm not against trade schools. I'm a trade guy myself. Right up on the other arm. Whoop, right up. I'm almost there. Right there is my journeyman certificates. I'm a trade guy myself. That's hard to do when you're looking at yourself in the window to make sure you're pointing right. But anyways, I'm hoping that gets fixed. If it doesn't get fixed, I'm just going to go and rip the wings off of it. If it's not actually, doing what it's supposed to do, we'll just go rip the wings right off of it. I know Og will help me rip.
We'll be there.
Yeah. Strategic investments and projects account, 10 million for community colleges and the University of Wyoming. Why has the University of Wyoming got so much versus the community colleges? And that's a really good question. The reality is University of Wyoming has a lot more programs than the community colleges. But I think there's a big push in the legislature to kind of balance those things out.
Yeah, and there's a couple deals fall in. UW actually is a constitutional charter in the state of Wyoming. It's part of the Constitution, and it got some land and a basis. The community colleges were just that. Originally, the towns funded them 100% internally. I believe clear up in the 2000s was when the legislature stepped in and started funding them. There's been a pretty big move towards parity. As a rule, community colleges are, I think Tyler may know the numbers we talked about. I think UW, it's about $40,000 a year direct aid from the state. Mm-hmm. It's less than $7 on a community college, so they're a bargain, and their graduates tend to stay in the state as well.
One of the interesting aspects, and I'm not going to take anything away from the University of Wyoming. I think they do a great job educating Wyoming kids and kids from all over the U.S. and the world. I'm just like everybody else, really proud of the University of Wyoming and the work they do. And I definitely don't want to take anything away from them. But I do want to brag on Gillette College a little bit. So my wife is a Gillette College graduate. She got her RN there. She's a registered nurse now and been working for quite some time. But she went to Gillette College, and her class had 100% board pass rate. And the way I understand it is there's not many colleges and not many universities that can make that brag. So that's a big shout out to our community colleges.
Oh, Gillette's incredible. Not only that, up till this downturn, I'm not sure where it's at now, they've placed 100% of their students that want a job have been placed and had jobs. And Gillette has just been stellar what they've done. And a lot of theirs has been done all by themselves. They've paid for the whole way.
Right. All right. So we're going to go into the key appropriations bills. The big one, obviously, for our little towns and counties is local government distributions. For the last couple of budget cycles, the state has provided $105 million to cities, towns, and counties. That's 99 municipalities and 23 counties. We've got this fancy funding formula, and it's kind of like it's a bastardized version of the original Madden formula at this point. But still, I think the formula works decently as far as that funding. And why does the state provide funding for our governments, for our little local governments? Well, we really don't provide cities and towns and counties the authority to tax themselves as much as other states do. So they're not really in charge of their own destiny in that regard. And that's kind of one of the problems that we've been looking at over the last couple of years. Not as hard as we should be, but just the same, we do provide that funding.
We did pass a bill or two this year that actually give them the ability that locally you've got the ability, if you want to vote it in, you can tax yourself. And
right.
I was a supporter of it. I assume Tyler was as well. Yeah. Really, truly a local control issue. If you don't want to tax yourself, you don't have to. But the tool's in the box. If the local community decides they want to tax themselves, they can.
Right. Well, I guess in my opinion on those deals, when it comes to local governments taxing themselves, typically, especially up in our neck of the woods, they've really got to do a heck of a sales job and have some plans in place as far as a municipality or a county, as far as how they're going to spend those funds. Otherwise, the locals just won't pass it. They've got to have a good plan in place, and that's I think that's more transparency in regards to funding and these projects than any other way. Certainly more so than the local government distributions. Local government distributions, that's just a check that we cut to every municipality and county in the state, and it gets to be. It's not a very transparent process comparatively to anything else, in my opinion. And I'm not that I'm against that funding model. I think we've got to do that as long as we're in this kind of situation.
Yeah.
So, House Bill 134, Wyoming tourism account funding, that pulls the Department of Tourism off the general fund and allows them to be funded through lodging tax, a statewide lodging tax. Yep. I'm going to see if there's, and if anybody wants to, because there's a little bit of a delay on the feed. So if anytime you guys have a question, we can go back to it. If we
can ask them at any time, that works fine.
Yeah. House Bill 53, education accounts investment earnings. That provides the investment and retention of investment earnings for the Common School Permanent Fund Reserve account. State budget division reorganization, that creates a state budget department.
That's actually kind of a sleeper big bill.
It was a big bill. That was a private bill, I believe, by Senator Dockstader, wasn't it?
That was Senator Dockstader's bill, and it was quite controversial. It actually allows a division within the governor's office for budget, which in truth, with the problems we're having right now, it was probably a little fortuitous that it's there, so that they've actually got a dedicated state budget officer that's working on these budget problems at a cabinet level.
Yeah. We did just get a question though, and that was from, I'm sure I'm going to butcher your name, so I apologize for this, Rochelle. Rochelle Trigg, do you think the education expenses will be reduced this quarter due to COVID? And if so, will they be losing funds in the future because it wasn't spent?
No.
I think, well, yeah, I don't think they're going to lose funds because it wasn't spent because of this whole COVID thing. That's not going to be a scenario. Do I think education funding is going to be reduced over the next couple of years? Yes. I think all facets of government are going to be reduced over the next couple of years. And I don't think that's a surprise to anybody.
I'm in with Tyler. We're hearing a fair amount on the school district. Some of them are going to get up against their 15% cap on savings because they've saved money. Obviously, we're not taking kids on buses. Expenses are down. They're trying to find ways to be able to keep that money. I'm sympathetic to that, but there's no simple way to do it. And of course, if you get over that 15% cap, it changes your next year. So that's just kind of the way it works. And there isn't a whole lot we can do to change that at this point in time.
Right. It's going to be a wild old world. I certainly, my stance on education has always been, and I have yet to meet the person that doesn't agree with this. Nobody's embarrassed about the salary that we pay our teachers. Nobody's shamed by the fact that our kids go to decent schools. The issue that folks have is on the administrative level. And so what we need to do is drill down on that and find out the truth of that situation. Is there a really big issue on administration? And I think so. And I think if you look, I think it's right out in front, right here, Department of Education. Oops, I went too far, didn't I? Department of Education, $325 million. That's a cost that we as taxpayers in the state of Wyoming. So we got to look at what exactly is the Department of Education doing. By the way. Right. That's just K through 12. So what exactly is the Department of Education doing for $325 million when essentially they're distributing the funds that the state legislature has appropriated for the purpose of education and sending to the local district? And I do know they do quite a bit more. I don't want to take away from them. They're hard workers, but we need to drill down on that and figure out if there's some efficiencies there, I think.
And Tyler's correct. There's no way possible that all levels of government aren't going to take cuts going forward. We're going to get into the budget projections a little later in the night, and we'll drill down on it. But this is going to leave no level of government unscathed. This is a landscape event that's never been seen in Wyoming. And basically, I can give you a little forecast. Our Liz or the rainy day account will be effectively empty at the end of the next biennium, if not sooner.
Right. It's kind of a horse wreck. The note on the bottom of this, Senate File 119, state-funded capital construction. Ooh, this is getting into Fight Club territory, Augie. That would have provided funding for building projects around Wyoming, including community colleges, the University of Wyoming, highways, state parks, prisons, and the state's military department. That failed to receive approval from both the House and Senate this year. And why? So the reason why is as a piece of legislation goes through the process, it changes between the House and Senate. And then the House and Senate have to make up those differences in a joint conference. And so 3 members from each side are appointed to make up those differences and present back to their bodies. And that joint conference, this is why I talk about Fight Club a little bit, is Ogden was a member of the joint conference from the Senate. I was a member of the joint conference from the House. So little old Crook and Weston County made up for a pretty good chunk of the members on that joint conference on a huge piece of legislation. I mean,
and it was typical of what you actually see different times. There was the last 2 or 3 years have been very hard negotiations on CapCon and the budget in the House and Senate. Mm-hmm. And it boiled up to a head this year, and the Senate and the House just would not budge on positions. And as a result, one of the major bills just died because we couldn't reach an agreement on it.
Right. Well, it was a tough deal, and I think that's going to be revisited again. A lot of these projects are pretty important. So I think that's going to be revisited again.
I think there's no doubt it'll come. I will say what it boiled down to. The Senate absolutely held a hard line not to take a 1-year break on funding a UW new construction. We've spent $2.5 billion at UW on new buildings, and they wanted a 1 to 1 year break in a tight budget, and we just couldn't get that negotiated back out of it.
Yeah, the House's position on that is, you can see where the Fight Club comes in here a little bit, guys. The House's position on that was, we thought it was inappropriate to start pulling one organization off of the state capital construction at the last minute, because we didn't want to start that precedence. Those were projects that were vetted. I could understand pulling out. I guess my issue is I could understand pulling out some of the different types of projects happening at one organization, but to completely pull them out in my opinion, it was a little bit too far. But the good news about that is we saved a pile of money by not passing that bill.
We got $100 million to deal with in the crisis now that was not there. And actually, it's better than that, but it's well north of $100 million.
Well, that's only if we amend the statutory language for SIPA, the way I understand it. SIPA is where is the fund we use for state capital construction, and we would actually have to go in and change the law on how that account's used. Otherwise, the money just sits there.
Right. No, it's there. It's not ours to spend, but statutorily we can go get it if we need it.
Right. So getting to revenue bills. Revenue. I don't know. I think the only bill I voted for of theirs was the House Bill 47. And I think it was Senate File 63, which was just a revenue definition, but that's also where I amended my bill into that. And it had to do with titles. House Bill 47, they had a rough go. The Revenue Committee has a tough road to hoe, that's for sure.
I am on revenue, and yeah, we didn't get it. So there's only been one bill that's come out, and it was not their bill, was the lodging tax bill. That's the only tax bill that's come out.
Right. So House Bill 47, local sales and use taxes, that allows municipalities to impose an optional increase upon local approval, voter approval to their local sales tax of up to 1%. So they got to go to you as voters and say, hey, this is what we're going to do with those funds, and they've got to sell it to you. And I think that's such an important aspect to allow these municipalities to control their own destiny. But House Bill 73, nicotine products taxation, that imposes taxes on electronic cigarettes. I was hard no on all of their nicotine bills this year. And my reasoning on it was the only bill that we were able to get killed on nicotine from the Revenue Committee was actually it wasn't from the Revenue Committee. There was an individual that ran a bill that raised taxes on cigarettes and chewing tobacco. And the reason I will never support those bills is because we live on the border of South Dakota that's got extremely high tobacco taxes. So we get all these South Dakota folks that come over to buy their nicotine over here. It keeps the little Aladdin General Store alive. It certainly helps the Beulah stores, helps out down in Newcastle and Upton. So yeah, I've always had an issue with those. Unfortunately, these bills passed. You have to be 21 now to use tobacco in the state of Wyoming. Yeah. Anyways, go to war, but you better not have that Copenhagen in your pocket. And that's Senate File 50. So that was unfortunate. Going back into education, the key education bills that happened, we're going to do a recalibration on school finance, which is really good that we're doing that, especially considering right now what's going on. Hathaway need-based scholarships graduate school, authorize that need-based Hathaway scholarships for graduate school students. I think that's a great aspect. You got some kids that are just they're just bright as a star, but they ain't got the funds to go the distance into some of those graduate programs, and that's the purpose of the Hathaway scholarship, is to help out kids that are extremely intelligent and can really rise up in this world if they had a little help from the state. And so those Hathaway dollars are going to be available for those graduate students. House Bill 32, resident tuition for military members and family, amends provisions for resident tuition for military members, spouses, and children, ensuring that our veterans, service members, and their families are eligible for in-state tuition at University of Wyoming and our community colleges. That one's a no-brainer.
Yeah, not too tough.
Yeah. Kindergarten start date. That amends the minimum school age, changing the statewide cutoff date for children to attend school from September 15th to August 1st. That they did not get that right in the abbreviation on this. They did not get that right. Currently, right now, it's September 15th. And the way I understand the bill, they've got that hard date of August 1st in there, but they also state that depending on where it, and this is public school only, so homeschoolers, you ain't got to worry about this, but on a needs-based assessment. So if your kid is turning 5 in like October or November, and this is a problem we've had in the past for a lot of community members, where your kid is just smarter than heck and can read and it's got all these things down, but they don't turn 5 until after August 1st. Then there's a mechanism that you can go to the school board and go to the. And
that's still there.
Yeah. And I think that's good. That's better than what the existing law was. Importation of prescription drug studies. That requires the State Department of Health to study the feasibility of foreign drug importation program with the goal of driving down costs for consumers. According to AARP Wyoming, 70% of their members say that prescription drug prices are their top concern when it comes to healthcare. Well, I think that's like everybody, not just AARP. Drug prices are insane. First responder workplace mental injury coverage. That was sponsored by Senator Nethercock, correct?
Yes, it was. That was her bill. Hard fought, tough bill.
Yeah. No, she really did. And so that allows enables mental injuries to be considered a compensatable injury for first responders. And so these are our first responders that come up on horrible accidents and stuff like that. And
have numbers of these cases that are provable. They're sure there. It was one I was so on, and by the time you got done listening to the stories, you can understand why it's there.
Right. Going back to tobacco real quick, Tom Clater said cigarette sales tax is double taxation. There's already a state stamp tax. Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Tom. I think the world would be a lot easier if you just left these types of products alone. It'd be certainly good for the state of Wyoming, because all of the surrounding states would be flooding into Wyoming to go to these little C stores and make purchases. So workers' comp credit provides a premium credit for employers that, as specified in the bill. And basically, you got to be a good employer and have paid your workman's comp up to date for so long. And that provides
workers' comp accounts the largest in the United States. heavily funded, and really what it is it's a rate holiday for guys that have been good payers at workers' comp. Says
Right.
we've got more than enough to cover what we need. It was a good bill.
Yeah, yeah. And so the state of Wyoming right now, when we're looking at how many weeks can the state of Wyoming go paying out of its unemployment to all of these COVID workers that are affected, we've got the longest timeline out of all 50 states that we can go.
500 months or something of the sort. It's compared to less than 40 for the next one below us.
They showed California can go like 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, it's less than a month in California.
Yeah. I suppose that's not funny. I shouldn't laugh at California, but it is California. So, so on to minerals bills. I used to be on the minerals committee. I love that. And then I got a chairman gig, and so I only get one committee. The difference between the House and the Senate is you can be a Senate chairman of a committee, such as Ogden is, but you still have to serve on another committee. In the House, our chairmen do not serve on another committee. We just have to be on one committee if we're a chairman, which is kind of a bummer. But just the same, there it is. So House Bill 14, drilling units, risk penalties, and mandatory royalties. That amends the calculation of the owner's share for drilling units and provides for the expiration of pooling orders and a royalty during payment of risk penalty. The bill aims to help stimulate drilling and protect land and mineral owners. That forced pooling provision is so important. And the fact that we're just getting around to changing that is pretty amazing. And that was a good piece of legislation.
It was. House Bill 13, sage grouse mitigation credits. This basically is driven by the federal government. Back when we used to drill wells in Wyoming, it was a way to offset sage grouse areas and using a mitigation fund to do so. It was a good bill. Unfortunately, with the oil the way it is now, there just isn't much happening right now. But that bill will be a good one when we come back again.
Yeah. The Wyoming Coal Marketing Program, that creates the Wyoming Coal Marketing Program to help promote our coal resources and promote Wyoming as a ground zero for clean technology development and deployment. We just had Ramaco Carbon get put up for public comment today on DEQ's website. That's a whole new mine that's going to be opening up by Sheridan. And so there's some good news, right? The world is not falling.
All scale, very high tech.
Yeah.
Carbon-based mine deal. Ramaco's it's a great project for Northeast Wyoming.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's pretty exciting.
Small modular nuclear permitting. That's an interesting one. That was, I believe, Dave Miller's bill, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Sounds kind of foolish up front, but in truth, the technology's getting there for these small nuclear reactors, and this basically just sets it up where they can come to Wyoming if they get the technology to where it works, and sets them up where they can plug them in.
Right. House Bill 200, reliable and dispatchable low carbon energy standards. Wyoming has adopted an energy standard. So that incentivizes carbon capture by allowing utilities to recover the cost of construction of carbon capture equipment from ratepayers. The bill requires utilities to go through the PSC before they can consider rate changes and puts a cap at 2%. And that's got a 10-year timeline on it. They don't have to have anything done by 10 years. And I'll just be frankly as honest as I can about this piece of legislation. I'm hoping to have this bill repealed in 10 years. I'm not. I know this is Governor Gordon was a big fan of it, and maybe I'm wrong on this. His opinion is that we've got to have something in place, a standard in place that actually moves the needle for the state of Wyoming, keeps coal alive. I don't believe this is it. I do not think an energy standard is the right way.
I would agree with that. We've messed with energy standards, and if you're going to do them, it's best not to take it out of the ratepayers' pockets.
Right. So, well, hopefully we can get that removed.
House Bill 159, monthly payment ad valorem. This was a monster of a bill, and this actually is a continuation of a bill that I passed the year before that we've got into hundreds of millions of dollars statewide that haven't been paid by companies declaring bankruptcy. At one point, while this bill was being debated, we actually had a mine in Campbell County with 50 plus million. I think the county pushed 90 million. The way it works right now on ad valorem taxes is these mines have it works up to about 18 months until they pay these taxes. They're supposed to be holding the money in escrow, but if they've gone broke and they're bankrupt, Wyoming's not in the line and they end up holding nothing for it. And this is for product that was sold for cash money by them and they just didn't pay it. Ad valorem's the same as your house taxes are. The only difference is they take your house away from you if you can't pay. On this one, they get away with it. And so this is a tough deal for industry. It's a hard one to swallow and it's fairly expensive for them, but it's going to get us in line. In one hand, it's going to help us in this crisis, assuming they don't go broke and lose the money. The good oil prices we've had for the last 18 months will take 18 months till we hit the real crash in oil on our income that's coming up. So there's a shiny side to it that probably is not the end of the world, assuming they don't go broke.
Yeah, you know, and a lot of these pieces of legislation, what we're looking at is the state reacting to having some bankruptcies throughout the state, and so these are what we looked at. So hence the monthly payment aspect. That way we don't have a county holding the bag at the end of the day, saying, "But you just declared bankruptcy."
The big loser on these bankruptcies is education.
Yeah,
about 70% of the ad valorem goes into education. So every time that somebody stiffs it, they stiff our education accounts, and that puts pressure on our general fund. This came from the coal bankruptcy task force. These guys worked their rear end off, did some really good work. That bill's been tough. When I passed the bill the year before, it'd been tried 5 or 6 times. It's pretty tough to get them through.
Right, right. Going into another one, tax lien enforcement. That gives the county governments the tools they need to recoup those lost tax dollars, making certain that the lien survives bankruptcy and maximizes those payments. So another one, protecting local government.
Puts Wyoming at the head of the line, so they're first. IRS comes first, and then the state of Wyoming comes now. House Bill 132, unpaid wage claim amendments, gives workforce services investigate unpaid wage claims. Basically does just what it says. If somebody gets accused of not paying their wages and whatnot, tells who can do it, how they go about investigating it. And basically it's almost like a whistleblower. It's anti-retaliatory. So if you've turned your employer in, he can't turn around and fire you because you said he didn't pay you on the right days or the right amounts or did overtime wrong. It's a good workers protection bill.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I'm sorry, I'm going
Attorney General authority and bankruptcy actions. This is another one came out of the coal task force. Really what happened, most of the money in these bankruptcies does go back to the schools, and the Attorney General did not have authorization to enter in with the counties. So the counties had to do their defense on their own of these bankruptcies, pay the lawyers, do the court cases, and then go back and apply to the state to get money on it. And what this does allows the AG to join in with them, use their expertise and their power to help defend the state's part of the money, which in turn is the county's part.
Right. So those are the major minerals bills to include our minerals bankruptcy task force. Going into judiciary, and some of these committees we're gonna have to whip through. I know we're probably putting some of you guys to sleep. I see we're losing some watchers because they are boring. We're gonna figure out a way, Og, to make these a little bit more exciting for those folks that stick with us. Like, I don't know, like maybe every time you disagree with me or something, you have to take a shot or something. I don't know.
Looks like you already started.
Yeah, well, I wish. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. That's actually past 5 o'clock. We should be able to have a drink.
So we can kind of whip through these pretty fast because they are pretty boring as a whole.
Yeah. So judiciary bills, and these are just updating our statutes to reflect what's actually going on. That's what you see a lot out of judiciary. So stiffens penalties for those charged with a subsequent conviction of human trafficking. We should probably just put them away forever. Consolidation of crimes. That was
kind of an interesting one. We had made national news on it because that was the one where Senator Hicks tried to remove the felony provision for cattle wrestling on it in an amendment. We beat the heck out of him on the floor. That's one of Wyoming's oldest laws, was the felony conviction for cattle theft.
Right. Right. Missing and murdered persons and other events, cooperation specifies duties for the Division of Criminal Investigation. You know, this bill went 59-1 through the House. 59 in favor, 1 against. You know who that idiot that was 1 against? That was me. I just can't stand unfunded mandates. And this is completely an unfunded mandate. And I think it's got a good intent, and really there is a huge issue out on the reservation, and that's what this goes for. It's just, boy, these unfunded mandates are tough. Anyways, next one.
Office of Guardian ad litem 2. This established a new department of the Guardian ad litem, although it was done internally, so it didn't increase money yet. But it did create a new one. It's been a problem for a long time. I didn't necessarily agree with the route they took, but it passed fairly easily.
We got a guy running for state senate in Georgia that's watching on this feed. His name's Colton Moore. He's a heck of a good guy, and he's an auctioneer to boot. And he's almost as got as big of a cowboy hat as I do, out of Georgia. Good dude. Anyways, he's on here. Tex McBride says we should hook up our chairs to electricity somehow, and that way when they disagree with us, they can shock us.
Sounds fun to me. I'll loan you my chair, Tyler.
Yeah. I know an electrician. We could get that done. Travel rec. So these are Augie Doggy's, Bill. I'll let you handle the gaming commission, Og.
I am chair of the DRW committee, 171 gaming commission. I am going to burn a tiny bit of time on this because it needs some good explanation, and we caught a lot of grief around it. Fair amount of it, even right here, there's a misunderstanding. That bill has been up, I believe, 5 times as a committee bill. It finally passed this year. The House did a fairly major rewrite on it. That was a good one. Really, this bill, the perception out there was it was a big expansion of gaming and it was going to do it. What it really did was took into account all the gaming that's happening in Wyoming, and in particular, it was geared towards the slot machine type gaming. And what we really did was the bill makes them actually the ones that are there that are legal, which we've gotten rid of. I believe about half the machines in the state have been removed already. For the ones that remain, it allows them to license for 14 months. And if they can pass a bill next year in the legislature that makes them legal, they're going to be allowed to stay under the Gaming Commission. Otherwise, those machines will be made illegal. That's going to be a hotly contested bill next year. It provides a framework. We've got all kinds of gaming that goes on in the state, and it provides a framework over the top of them so that we're able to regulate and make sure it's done. One of the big things was, I will tell you, Cook County either didn't have any machines or almost none. That was because Joe Barron didn't allow them in. He took it very seriously. A lot of counties chose to look the other way. They had machines in them. This bill now makes it where the state can come in and actually enforce. If the county attorney will not enforce county law, they come in and do it. Tyler and I both get calls from those of you different times that are frustrated with what county attorneys do. They're one of the most powerful people in Wyoming. If they choose not to prosecute a crime in your county, there's almost no recourse to deal with it. They literally, from any type of crime there is, if they choose not to press a charge, that crime will not be prosecuted. And this opens that up a little bit. House Bill 176, if we could, we'd flash a picture up of Tex McBride.
Yeah, right. No, that was big text. I got to mention something real quick here, Og, on 171. This is back to Fight Club. Ogden was the chair of the joint conference from the Senate. I was the chair of the joint conference from the House. And Ogden got beat like a drum. No, I'm just joking. But I did want to mention that. I did.
For once, which doesn't always happen, as I said, and I was pretty polite about it when I said it, the House did a fairly major rewrite of the bill, and they did it right. It was done well, and it was good, and it made it easy. I ran one page of amendments for all the things they goofed up on it. They agreed that it was good. And from that end, Tyler didn't fight either. So we did a good one. 176, Game and Fish Data Protection. This is something that all the people ought to be proud of. Tex McBride came, and I hope he's all right with me using his name. He came to us with a problem on a lion snare situation that the person's data was all released publicly via a animal rights group asking for a report from the Game and Fish. Should have never come out. Tyler felt like, and I did as well, they really didn't have to have this law. Game and Fish and the Attorney General said they did have to have it. Sat down with Tex, sat down with the Game and Fish and the AG. We actually wrote a new section in the law. And the truth is, it's way better now because it protects both landowners and the premises as well, which was not particularly done before. It's done right. It was a good bill, and it tells you that you as a constituent, if you call us, you have an issue that's important enough to be made law, you can actually affect and get laws in the book. So that's the Tex McBride bill. Senate Journal 1, Firearm Hunter Education, that's a bill of mine. That bill was really a fun one. It's a joint resolution, and the reason it is, our Constitution says the legislature will not dictate curriculum. I would actually love to have made it where it dictated that they had to do it, and the bill would have passed, by the way. Just don't believe it's constitutional, and no one ever challenges them. But this basically brings in hunter safety and firearm safety into our schools, and probably in the junior high, and we're guessing looks like a very high percentage of the schools in Wyoming are going to adopt it. So most of your kids are going to be taught what guns are, what they do. They're going to be taught the safety end of the deal. And when they finish their course, which is going to be a physical education course, they're going to be able to have their hunter safety certificate. All done at no cost to the state. It's done internally in cooperation with the Game and Fish. Will be at no cost to the districts.
Right. I'm going to bring up a couple of comments real quick, just so we're keeping up to date here. Sorry for getting to this a little late, guys. And I'm guessing, so Shelley's question in regards to the Gaming Commission, that it didn't cost taxpayers either. And there was not because we turned the Pari-Mutuel Commission into the Gaming Commission, there was no funds on that. Is that correct, Doug?
Yeah, I can't see the questions, Tyler, but I will answer it. That is self-funded. The truth is that is going to raise between $6 and $9 million that goes back to cities and towns, and a chunk of it to education. But that has no expansion of government and no government money involved in it in the entire commission. We rolled the Gaming Commission into the existing Pari-Mutuel Commission, adds 2 new members to that commission. One of them's a tribal member, one of them needs to be law enforcement, and takes off. So what it really did was repurpose the existing piece of government, did not expand government or anything, but provided what really in truth is a large degree of protection. Interestingly enough, as the bill came out, we were told, why would you do this? There's no need for it. Weston County had a payout of a slot machine that was over $100,000 that to this day hasn't been paid, and it's happened multiple times statewide. A lot of problems when there's no enforcement. There's a lot of things go on that's bad, and so some people that were pretty opposed to it found out that if you're going to have it, you actually need some type of regulation out there, and we did it as lightly as we could.
You know, and one of the wild deals on why I was when it's kind of a different rule, but I think it's a good rule to have, is when you're assigned to the Joint Conference Committee, they typically assign 2 people that voted for it and 1 person that voted against it. And so I was assigned to it, and was even made chair of it as a no vote on the bill, which allowed me the opportunity to bring forward some of the issues that I had. We still didn't get there, but I think it was dang, like Ogden said, it was dang sure better than when it started. And there's a real argument on for the bill. Another interesting aspect too is I had the opportunity to talk with a bar owner down south of Gillette, down in Wright, about some of the games that they have and what the steps are going to be for them going forward. And so for any of you interested in this, you've got until May 15th to get your applications in to make those games viable to move forward.
If they're not, they're going to be illegal, and you have to take them out of the state. It's not turning them off.
Yeah, so that's kind of a big deal.
Tyler did good work on it. You'll see there'll be a follow-up bill that comes out of the Gaming Commission that cleans it up some. But the real battle next year will be, are we going to allow them or not? That was the biggest argument I had when we did the bill, and it happened the way it should. My belief is it's a standalone bill, and it needs argued through the legislature. Do you want those type machines in your community? And if so, how do you want it to happen? And that'll be a bill next year.
Yeah. Going on the Ag Committee, or big key ag bills, Senate File 81, that was a livestock brand administration. You know, the legislature.
That's actually mine. That's off an amendment I did last year.
Oh, go ahead, Og.
I created permanent brand inspections last year. Interesting thing, when you get an agency that gets a bill they don't like, they spend a full year and don't enact the law, it was going to turn into really a bad wreck for our livestock board. So we basically went in and redid the provisions on it, brought the permanent brand back in. And for those of you out there that want to have a brand for 100 years, you can actually do that at this point in time. And it makes it where you're not subject to losing it. It's kind of a win-win. It actually makes them more money than they make on the regular brands. And yet gives that longevity out there.
Right. I'm going to bring up a comment really quick. It's on a different subject, but Tom Clater asked, what happened to the Firearms Owner Protection Act? And that was a piece of legislation that started off in the House. It was ran by Representative Jennings, and Representative Jennings went through the House and then it went over to the Senate, and it got watered down a little bit. And because of the watering down, some of the folks that normally support good gun bills decided to vote against it, and they killed it. Even though there was still some protections in there that I thought were important. I was really disappointed in seeing that bill die. That shocked me that some of those guys voted against it. I think that was I can't remember.
When it died in the Senate?
Yeah.
It was actually killed by two of our big gun advocates, the way it turned out. Didn't like it. If I'm not mistaken, it was Senator Bouchard and Senator James. And were conflicted because the NRA had supported it on one side and Wyoming gun owners went against it on the other side. Left them pretty conflicted, and they're the ones who killed it. Very ironic to have two of your really big gun guys, actually one of them that used to be the director of WYGO, kill a bill.
Yeah, that was a wild deal. I don't know that many people really understood what happened there, Tom, with those individuals, but I'm sure they had their reasons, and ultimately definitely hit them up. We're not trying to throw them under the bridge or anything like that.
No, there's nothing.
Yeah, caught everybody.
Tyler and I have both been steadfast gun supporters. I've got some grief on it. We've basically sponsored part of the major legislation that's out there and been a part of it from the start.
Right. Animal damage management funding. So this is the type of funding that comes from the state of, for example, grizzly funding, those types of things. Grizzlies are going out, wiping out your cattle herd, or you got a big herd of elk because you border up to state land, and hunters run them through your fence or something like that. That's what that's for. And so the statute laid out exactly what was available for funding. And every couple of decades or so, we got to up that amount just because of inflationary reasons. And then 155.
This is one of the big bills of the session.
Yeah, that was a fun one. Animal shares, and that was kind of a sleeper. You guys didn't see me talking about it much during session, and it was for a reason. I was trying to keep my head down on it because I've tried to amend meat into the Food Freedom Act in the past, and I've got whacked pretty hard by the USDA, where I've gotten letters from them in the middle of the process threatening state primacy, those types of things that, in my opinion, violate the 10th Amendment, but just the same, they do them. So I kept my head down on this, kept quiet, what we were doing. And what this allows for is it allows for ranchers or farmers to sell shares on their entire herd of cattle, right? So that anytime one of those animals are taken to slaughter, technically you as a shareholder were an owner before it was slaughtered, thereby meeting the standard of the Federal Meat Inspection Act exemption, which allows you to purchase as much or as little of that beef as possible. Now, we already do that quarters and halves and eighths already, but herd shares or animal shares does not take into consideration quarters or eighths or halves. You can buy 1/1000th, and then you can show up and buy a T-bone or a couple pounds of hamburger every once in a while, and it's really an end run around inspection.
Great bill, a continuation of Tyler's good bills. I was pretty proud co-sponsor on it. I was lead sponsor in the Senate on it.
Yep. And so Shelley Trigg says, been seeing people totally misunderstand that animal shares bill, but you seem to have a lot of supporters trying to educate people about it so we can keep it and not ruin our chances for food freedom. That's absolutely right, Shelley. And I really appreciate your understanding of the bill. I wish it didn't have to be this complicated. I wish we could just put in the law that go directly to your producer, right? Just like we do with most other things for the Food Freedom Act. But due to the Federal Meat Inspection Act and the Wholesome Meat Act of 1967, I'm geeky on food policy, by the way, sorry about that. But due to these acts at the federal level, they've literally butchered states' rights. I know that's a bad pun.
They fenced out individual producers selling beef is what they did.
Right.
And this was the start of the advent of the major packers in the United States. And they were very effective at preventing small scale meat operations to get toeholds in communities.
Right. I will say with the implementation of animal shares, House Bill 155, Wyoming rules the roost as far as local artisan foods going directly to your producer. There's no other state that even comes close to the rights and abilities that we have as individuals. And as you'll note, I mean, a lot of our bills that we end up running forward are just really, I don't know of a better way to put it besides screwing over the federal government and their stupid laws. That's probably not the most diplomatic thing to say, but that's the reality. That's what 155 is about, is me reading section 623 of the Federal Meat Inspection Act and finding a way to bastardize it. Should be nicer about it. Corporations, elections, and political subdivisions. I'm the committee chairman for that. Before I move on, so Tom brought up, is there a correlation between reintroduction of the wolf and chronic wasting disease? I don't know. Og, you know anything? Yeah, I don't know about that. That's a good question.
On DRW, it's been brought up. Chronic wasting was there before the wolves were there. Have they caused the spread of it? We really don't know, although I can tell you it has spread extensively in other areas that there's no wolves in. So it can spread without it, but easily it could have spread. They're finding lots of bad things about chronic wasting. If a deer dies with CWD in the road ditch, the grass that grows under where he bled out and rotted away, the grass actually can cause chronic wasting. It's a tough disease, and it's in a lot of states now. I think we're up to 20 some states now. Going to be a major issue nationally over time.
Right. So another question was from Shelley Trigg. And this is back on 155 animal shares. Will this help us in the current predicament, processors killing our meat producers? And my opinion is yes. That was the intent of the bill. It's been a problem with the big packers for decades upon decades now of just cutting the heck out of our small ranchers and taking all of the profit. And that was the intent of it. Now, granted, I didn't know that the packers were going to go on this rampage like they have because of the coronavirus, being able to get away with it. This definitely can help, but in order for it to help, we have to eat local. We have to want that. We have to want that food, and then on top of that, we've got to encourage our local ranchers to start producing locally.
Yeah, Tyler's definitely in there, and it's tough because the truth is, to butcher yourself is more expensive than buying it at the market, and everyone needs to understand that. This isn't a cost savings measure; it's a food safety and other measure.
Right.
Example I'll use: we butchered some cows a couple of years ago. We did some last year as well, that we feed through our own restaurant at the KOA. For me to sell my own cow beef that I've hauled in, had processed at a federally inspected plant at Sturgis, and have it processed into patties to serve the same as we do others, I have to charge $1 a hamburger more, $3 a pound more, to get the same price that I can get out the back of a truck buying from a wholesaler. So there's some issues about how tough it is to really process cheaply, but it's the best food in the world. Tyler's stuff has provided the opportunity. As guys scale into it, you'll see those costs come down. If you've got local plants that are processing 150 or 200 head a day, they're going to do it for less money then.
I think it could be really good. And Dick Clark asked, can Wyoming pass an origin bill on meat sold in Wyoming? And that's actually been tried several times by Representative Hunt to apply that. The biggest problem that we end up getting is the USDA once again comes forward and threatens primacy. And so primacy for the state of Wyoming, what that equates to is we have state inspected sites, state inspected butchers that would be automatically closed. They would have to close their doors as soon as we lose primacy. And so that's the big scare, is we're going to shut down several businesses if we lose our primacy.
Tyler actually had meat in one of the earlier food freedom bills, and we would have done exactly that. And we got the cease and desist order right in the middle of it. It was going to be you want to on your hands that you shut down the private plants in Wyoming.
Yeah. Okay, going on to, and Shelly says, Kohler's has beef at $3.25 a pound for half or whole right now, coming from local ranchers. Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
So going into corporations, elections, and political subdivisions, coal-fired electric generation facilities. So that's a mandate from the state saying if you're going to shut down one of our good coal-fired power plants, then you've got to try to sell it first. And that cleans up, really what that does, it cleans up a bill from last year, makes it a little bit more workable. And that's an issue that we studied over the interim. Senate File 36, large-scale solar and wind energy facilities. We actually put what we ended up doing, large-scale wind was already there in the Industrial Siting Council, but solar was not. So we amended that into the Industrial Siting Council. And why would we do that? And the reason why we did that is we had a large solar farm that was put in the southwest corner of the state, and it was on BLM where it was put in, and the BLM released an EIS and said, yeah, go ahead and build it. This is great. And I don't know that they ever looked, or they just didn't care that they were building it over the top of a trona mine.
Which trona mines have about 4 foot of subsidence after they've mined.
Right. So this, I mean, they allowed them to build a solar farm over the top of active mineral mining. And so eventually that solar farm's going to sink and not be usable. And so that's a real wreck for that solar farm, and it's a scary thing for the trona miners, because are they going to get sued? And so we went in and handled this situation that they've actually got to go through the State Industrial Siting Council, because once again, you can't rely on the feds. And I should put a caveat, little asterisk on that our local departments, whether it's Forest Service or the local BLM, they're all good hands, and they work their tail off, but they're also directed by DC. And so that's the struggle that those guys deal with. And how do you handle that situation? So nothing against our locals. They do a great job, but DC sucks. And then House Bill 27, Select Committee on Blockchain Technology and Innovation. Over the last couple of years with the blockchain laws that we've been able to do, we've been able to attract over 300 businesses to the state of Wyoming. One of those businesses is a multi-billion-dollar organization that's got right around 250 to 300 employees worldwide. And they made a $500,000 donation to the College of Engineering at the University of Wyoming in February, and plan on doing it again. And so they're really pumped about being in Wyoming and are being, good corporate citizens. And so this is about expanding and diversifying our economy is what we're looking at doing there. And so far, so good. So far, it's been a good deal. So this select committee, we're getting rid of the task force. Yeah. So this task force is going away. Select committee is going to be the stand up now. And that select committee is going to be just like the task force, where we don't look at spending any money. We just look at it amending existing statutes to allow a place where these new technology companies can actually live and thrive while protecting consumers. And so that's been the goal of that committee. Ogden and I were both just reappointed to it. So we'll be serving on that again.
Interestingly enough, I just spent the morning on a video conference with the governor's pick that ironically is a very large money manager that's moved to Jackson and has opened up a business because of the blockchain bills to do it, and is very excited about it.
Right. Yeah, he owns a trust over in Jackson, I believe.
Yeah. Just got a quick one from Tom Clater. How's opening the coal parts to coal for foreign markets coming along? Long and short, poorly. You know, there's been a lot of efforts made there. Governors made efforts. Our congressional delegations made efforts. We've lost multiple times on the lawsuits. Doesn't mean we have quit, but it does mean it's very tough. Washington and Oregon are just really tough on the way they go about it. They're not only using their local governments, but they brought the tribes in, and it's really a tough hole. But Wyoming has not given up. We haven't quit.
Right. Yeah. Washington and Oregon suck. I don't know if anybody's on here watching from Washington or Oregon, but your state's trash. Sorry.
I'll second that.
I probably shouldn't say that, but I really don't care for them. So sorry, I got a school reach is calling. I don't know what they could be calling about schools out right now. So God, I got to mute all these things now. Okay, I think I'm good. All right. Getting on to transportation, highway, military affairs bills. Senate File 3, Military Department Authority to accept donations. They couldn't really accept donations in the past because of some statutory language, so we cleaned that up a little bit. House Bill 5, driver's license and IDs, that authorizes that if you want a digital ID to be on your phone or whatever device, you can check a little box, and you can have, you still got to have the hard copy. That'll still get issued to you, but if you want a digital version also, you can opt.
Surprisingly hard to pass.
Yeah, and it's an opt-in. You don't have to get it if you don't want. So if you don't want it, don't check the box.
Yeah.
Boom. Wildlife conservation efforts. So that
basically for wildlife crossings.
Yeah.
That's set up, and it's already a play. We've got numbers of companies giving money, and it helps build the wildlife crossings.
Yeah, there's folks that are wanting to donate to that side. I say let them.
Yeah.
Donate. All right. So there's some additional resources. You can go check out our website. Obviously, the legislature's website is wyoleg.gov. And then we've got our own little blog for the majority, the Republican majority, wyolegmajority.blogspot.com. And then we've also got a social media account where we did these cool little videos throughout the session. Crook and Weston County interns I think they filmed all of them.
They did 100% as far as I know.
If Tegan's still watching, maybe Tegan can answer that in the chat. I think it was I think they filmed them all. They did just a great job. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share real quick. So that's pretty much what happened during the legislative session as far as the high and low points, and kind of a general idea of what happened. Anybody or do you want to close out or?
I can, I'll enter in briefly into it on the budget issues probably. You're talking, we lose you?
No, I'm good.
All right. The state, and we've had some projections come in. I don't know if Tyler's got the letter handy. I didn't pull it up, but Don Richards, who's part of the Craig group, and this is not a Craig estimate, we're somewhere between 300 million and $1 billion in the hole coming up. We know we've got a wreck going on. The number I'll give you that's kind of interesting they've come is when oil is at sub $20 a barrel, which it is now and has been for over a month, it's about $40 million a month lost revenues to Wyoming. Of course, everybody out there knows what's happened to our sales tax the last 45 days. We're going to have a full month plus part of another one that basically every business in the state shut down. The state's going to be faced with some really hard financial dilemmas. We've got some hard work in front of us. One of the not so bright spots, or bright spots depending on how you look at it, the federal government via Senator Enzi Brasso made it where the COVID funds that came back, which the Fed spent obscene amounts of money, but Wyoming's going to get $1.25 billion COVID funds. And Tyler and I have been working to do some pretty neat things with some of those if they're going to do it. If you read the paper, you saw we're trying to build hospitals and clinics with them. The budget issues are going to be tough. We welcome your input on budget items and how we go about it. We really literally have cut enough out of the budget. Now we're talking about laying people off jobs and ending programs. So it's going to be reasonably tough. Everybody's got their chin up. We've all worked hard together, and we'll continue to do so. I guess for me, on closing out, I thank everybody for their support and keeping after us doing stuff. It's really got where it's 12 hours a day right now trying to get things done. It's just literally all day long, trying to get where the state's ready to go. We've been working pretty hard lately with the governor's office to try to get things back open in these rural counties that aren't having problems. That's a tough order right now. And we really feel strongly, and I think Tyler does as well. We want to see our local cafes open. We want to see people being able to go to the golf course. We want business to come back. So there we go. Tyler pulled it up.
Yeah, and so we've got a couple questions really quick before we dive into these numbers. But essentially what we're looking at, Mayor Dick Clark asked, did I understand in the Sundance Times you are working to get federal funding to replace the hospital in Sundance? And so we're looking at that COVID-19 money that's coming in from through the CARES Act as possibly utilizing that 1.25 billion. So the state's been assigned those funds, and we either spend it or we return it back to the federal government, and they'll spend it in another state.
And they're very tightly controlled the way they come.
Right.
So we really can't, back to cities and towns, we can't just hand the money out. It's got to be directly linked to COVID spending. The state right now, the feds have not written the rules. Department of Treasury writes them, but they've made it clear that we can't use it to replace sales tax revenues either for the state or cities and towns. And we can't use it to replace items that you would normally spend money on that aren't COVID related. Right. So you're looking at medical type situations, first responders, probably some law enforcement. We're going to be able to do some, but as far as just taking money and handing it out, it's not going to happen.
Right. I do think that we will find some creative ways to send some monies to locals, though, because we're a creative bunch.
And we're open to your ideas. Both Tyler and I, if you've got ideas, definitely get a hold of us. We've been working on this for over a month now, and we're open. If you've got something you think you'd like to see, let us know. We're actually working some with the delegation to help get things written in so that we can be easier to get them done.
Right. And so that's going to be definitely want to seek your input for the towns and counties that are listening. You know, I reached out to a lot of your chambers, and I've heard back from a lot of them as far as what the state can do to help. So please keep sending that information to both Senator Driscoll and I, because there's opportunities there where we can get those funds directly in your hands. We've just got to be really creative on how we go about it. And some things we might be able to do, some things we might not, but it doesn't hurt to try. And so we definitely want to do that. We're also looking at a new clinic down in Upton, and then also a new clinic up in Hewlett. I think Moorcroft has the newest clinic, if my memory serves me correctly. Jumping into this, and Dick says towns are seriously hurting for funds. Yeah, everything that we're hurting as far as the state with these revenue projections we're about to go through, it's magnified tenfold on towns and counties, because a lot of them don't have mineral revenue that the state has. But what we're looking at here is this was put together by our Craig, and so you can see the optimistic area. So that's basically if we were to get things turned around right now and get the doors back open, the general fund and the budget reserve account would see a $250 million hit. That's a negative. The new
that's usually not biennial.
Right. And so the OPSTA account, that's the 1% stable. I can't remember. They just created this account, the OPSTA account. Time or 1% severance tax account. Boom, it's right below it. I'm an idiot. That's going to see a $16 million account. The Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund is going to see a $38 million hit. The SFP, that's a school foundation program account, and the school capital construction account will see a $136 million hit. Locals will see a $109 million hit. Other 0. for a total of $555 million hit. Best case scenario. Worst case scenario?
That's the best one, yeah.
Yeah. And then the worst case scenario, you can see those numbers right to the right of that.
And that is for 3 years, Tyler. So the initial one is about 170, 80 million, maybe 200 million.
Yeah.
But it's very sobering when you start looking at it.
Yeah, no, it's an absolute horse wreck, and it's a tough time. But we're Wyoming, we're better than everybody else, so we're gonna get this deal figured out. We're gonna have to be creative as hell. We really are. We've got to look at new types of businesses coming into the state of Wyoming. We got to think way outside the box to make this deal work. And so that's going to be a tough road to hoe. The pessimistic, if this keeps going on into like July, August time period, you're looking at a $2.7 billion hit to revenues. Our total budget is 2.9 billion for 21 and 22. We're gonna, so hopefully we don't go that long. And Ogden had mentioned, we're working with the governor's office on getting these economies back open. I know there's not a lot of press on it out there right now, but that is what the governor's talking about, is how do we get the state back open? How do we move past this? And so he wants to have a solid plan in place, and he's been working towards that. And hopefully puts us to work as state legislators, working in our little communities. We're a little closer to folks than he has the opportunity to be. So, and I know I get to spend a lot of time on the phone with a lot of you guys, talking about this situation and issue. And please keep calling me. Please keep writing, both of us, because we're going to fix this. We're going to get past this. I mean, maybe not the legislature. Well, it's not going to be the government. The economy is going to be fixed by the economy, by the people driving the economy. And so if the state legislature can find a way to get out of your way, please give us those ideas. I think it's paramount that a huge deregulation happens. And I think a huge deregulation can help considerably, but it's going to take multiple different things going on in order to save our economy.
We're going to need a lot of help. The deregulation has huge opportunity for the state of Wyoming, but it comes with a headwind, and it requires a lot of help from all of you.
Yeah. It's and this goes basically into the details of what we're looking at and how those revenues are impacted. And so you can see oil price, oil production, all of those different aspects, natural gas, the non-mineral assessed valuations, general fund and all other, where they come from. And so you can see the hit. They're expecting at the very best an 11% hit on statewide sales and use tax. I wish the oil price was at $35 a.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That when you look at it right now,
right,
it's worse than the pessimistic is. So we absolutely have to have a rebound in oil prices in the next 6 months.
Yeah. Which
and coal production is dropping as well.
Yeah. And supposedly things work themselves out in regards to Saudi Arabia and Russia. But we'll see. We got some more question here. So Linda Crawford, she's the high school principal down there in Upton, does a wonderful job. Thanks for taking this time for sharing and listening. Looking forward to normal. Yeah, right on. Dick Clark said the same thing. Looking forward to normal. And Shelly Trigg says, thank you for putting this together for us and taking time to walk us through things. You guys bet, man. You're our bosses. That's it. I mean, you're our boss. So, I wish we could be doing this face to face. And we'll keep doing these if you guys dig them. I'm sorry about the technical glitches tonight. Facebook sucks. Also, they're horrible. And I just, but it worked, boom, really well with YouTube. So no issues there. And so we'll keep doing these. You guys want us to pick up a topic, send us a message. You guys want us to handle one specific topic. One of these nights, I'd really like to go through fiat currencies and the history of fiat currencies and money manipulation that's currently happening at the Federal Reserve. But I don't think anybody would tune into that one. It's kind of
probably the one other thing that we did not bring up there's almost undoubtedly going to be a special session of the legislature. It'll be the first one since 2004. Likely, we're going to have more than one. The way the Constitution reads, the governor can call us in and we can do a remote session, which would be the first time ever in the state of Wyoming. If the legislature calls in, we actually have to be in Cheyenne, so it's probably going to be the governor calls it. It'll be a 1 day or a day and a half session. We'll pass just a handful of bills to deal with current issues. And then we're probably going to be back again and deal with budget issues not very far down the road. I really encourage all of you to pay attention to that. And if you have things you want brought up, we're actually going to have opportunities economically to deal with things. If you got specific issues you've got, get a hold of Tyler, get a hold of me, tell us what you want. We will bring it up front. You literally can see your fingerprints on bills when you get things across, and we can figure them out. So the special session will be there. The other thing I'll tell you that for the first time, the one thing that's actually a plus out of this, all of the committee meetings for the next month or two are all going to be held in remote locations, you know, off of the feeds very similar to this. You've never ever been able to see, other than a very few of them, streaming of the committee meetings, and all of the committee meetings will be streamed. So you're going to be able to go to the legislative website, pick your committee out. You'll be able to watch it live. And I can tell you the committee chairmen are going to watch texts and take comments the same way we have. You're going to be able to really see a meeting like you've never seen before. So there is an upside to it. We're getting the technology down. Obviously, Tyler and I battled it tonight pretty good. This LSO has as well. I think we're going to have this down. Probably the first video committee meeting there's going to be is going to be mine. It'll be TRW, and I believe we're going to have one in a week.
Wow.
Talking about opening Wyoming back up and effects on leisure and hospitality industry. How do we get your local cafes open? How do we come up with procedures to get them open and do it? The governor's order expires on April 30th, and we're actually hoping that with his help that in May, we're looking at getting some businesses up and rolling in Wyoming.
That's right. Yeah, no, great points, Og. And so guys, really appreciate everybody. I'm going to check for any more comments. Yeah. Okay. So everybody's pretty pumped about being able to see the meetings right on. We're obviously excited about something we pushed pretty hard for in the past, and it's finally coming to fruition. It just took a global pandemic to make it happen, which is kind of a bummer. But we're going to do it now. So that's great. There's a silver lining to this. So really appreciate everybody taking the time and getting on. So appreciative of all of you guys. But yeah, we'll see you guys at the next one. Hit us up with ideas if you want us to cover something, or if you think Ogden should have to take a shot every time Tyler tells him to. Thanks a lot, guys.